Brothers, good to be back on the mic. Trust you're all crushing it in your world. In today's episode, it's a little bit different to the normal one. And what I mean by that is I was recently interviewed by another pod producer, Salkeld from the Kurious Group. And in this ep, I really share about how Rising Kings was founded, digging in on my past, my history, and how this thing actually become something. And also too, I really open up on what I believe are some of the core challenges that are really holding male business owners back, and the philosophy around what Rising Kings sits upon in terms of how we show up, how we do things, and also too, I think the best thing about this is it's a fully unplanned, unscripted interview. And so what you're going to get is the real raw essence of Rising Kings and myself. This is how I live. And I think it's important for you guys as the listeners to actually really see, this shit's not made up. This is legit in terms of how I operate on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. And so I really encourage you to tune into this episode, listen to what I have to share, and also how Charles, questions me and pulls the best out of me through this. So it's a really good, strong interview, well worth listening to. Tune in, and I'd love to hear your feedback. So hit us up on YouTube or hit me up on Instagram or the socials and let me know what you think. Otherwise, have an awesome week. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Rising Kings pod. Until then, stay strong.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Kurious Cast. My name is Charles Klutzy. I'm your host and co-owner of the Kurious Group. Today we have a really special guest. We have Ben here, the owner of Rising Kings, and it's someone who I've actually been wanting to talk to for quite some time and to really get an understanding of his story and the great work that he does in helping men really find their true potential. As Ben says, Rising Kings is a movement for men with curated programs designed for men who want to go all in. So, Ben, thank you very much for being here today.
Brother, honor, man.
It's really great to finally have you here and to sit down and have a chat and get to know a little bit more about yourself and the amazing work that you do and just really helping people. So, not just for me, but also for the audience.
Yeah.
We'd love to just kind of know a little bit about your backstory and kind of who you are and where it all kind of begun. So
Absolutely.
I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah. And so, look, I'm 45, married for 13 years. I've got 2 little kids. Well, not little anymore. My son just turned 13, so I've got a teenage boy and an 11-year-old daughter. And, my pathway to this journey, man, wasn't set out to actually start a business or anything. I found myself in my early 30s pretty lost as a early fatherhood, business, all that sort of stuff on paper. You'd see all the success, all the things that were there, high achiever. But man, just not happy, just not a happy man. Always frustrated, always annoyed. I was pretty disconnected with my beautiful chosen one, my wife. And there was just a point in time where I kind of decided I've got 2 options here. I follow down this path of, that's just how it is being a man, triggered, pissed off, frustrated, annoyed, disconnection. You hear about it all the time. That's just the pathway of a man versus, is there another way here? Am I willing to look at this through a different lens of showing up as a better husband? How do I find better connection with my wife? How do I find more presence for my kids? And also too, more fulfillment and joy in my life. And that's led me down this path, over a decade later, man, where Rising Kings, this movement has been formed. And so that's my premise, brother. I'm really adamant about there's the old way of operating as a man, which is, busting your ass, chasing hard, putting everything that you can into business to make money, which, we think is success. And I think there's some level of that, but at the same time, what are we giving up in order to have that?
Exactly. What's the sacrifice that you've got to give to get to that next level? And is it really worth it when you get there?
Correct. Because we get a lot of guys who come into Rising Kings, man, who crush it in terms of business, multi-million-dollar businesses, got all the toys, all the houses, all the things, yet unfulfilled, disconnected. A lot of them have just started to transition into divorce.
Yep.
And they come to us to go like, is there a way to actually what you call like have it all really? Like, can I have the success in business? Can I have the success in marriage? Can I have the presence with my kids? Can I have the fulfillment, the joy, the happiness? Can you actually have all that? Or is it you got to pick one or the other? Now, through the work and through the processes and the systems that we've run, we found that there is this thing, like we call it the fulfillment flywheel. So it's like bringing this all together, right? So having success in business, having a beautiful connected marriage, having, being very present and deep connected with your children. And at the same time, man, like having fun, being fit, healthy and strong in your 40s, in your 50s, in your 60s.
And this all sounds amazing. And I know, like, I already know parts of it from our conversations we've previously had, but, where was it in your journey that it was like, you said you had that light bulb where you're like, I might have this great success in my business and things are going great and, and what you were doing at the time, but it's like there's this unfulfillment that's there. What was the trigger that kind of set the wheels in motion for you?
Yeah, there was one point in time, man. So I was about 32, 33. And
It's about my age.
Yeah, about your age then, young buck. And I'd always wanted to go on this surf trip to the Mentawais with a bunch of mates. Like it'd been something we'd been planning out for like nearly 6-7 years.
Yeah.
And as we led up to it, like that's all I thought about, like, so we had 2 little kids at the time. Our youngest, Lily, she was, I think she was no more than 9 months old, man. So we had a 9-month-old and an 18-month-old, which is pretty full on, like 2 kids under 2. And my beautiful chosen one was kind of looking after that. I was a pretty checked out husband at that time. And I'm like, dude, I just need to get on this surf trip. Like that's all I'm thinking about, so I can take a break from the business. I take a break from the family. Like I've got to go and do this and I'm going to find my happiness and fulfillment and I'll come back rejuvenated and, invest that time back into life, business, marriage, etc. But man, when I went out on this surf trip, my mates that I was there with, like they were frothing every day, jumping off the boat. Like we had this island that we stayed on. We'd go out on a boat every day out to these phenomenal breaks. But man, like 45 minutes in, all I wanted to do was come back and lie on the boat. Just felt really tired, really lethargic. And when I was going through that process, I was thinking about my wife and kids the whole time. Like all I was thinking is like, I just want to get home to the wife and kids. And so I'm there, I'm like, dude, what's the deal? Like all I've thought about is this trip. Yeah. That's the only thing I wanted. That's all I thought about. And then when I'm there, all I thought about was what I had for the last, couple of years. But it just wasn't present, wasn't connected. And dude, that shook me. Like I came back feeling like something was broken. I'm like, this is not good. Like what is wrong with you, Ben? And that started me down the journey of personal development. Now I'm an aerospace engineer. So personal development, which is not logical, and aerospace engineering, which is very logical.
Yeah.
Never crossed paths.
No.
Like always saw it as like
different minds that don't talk.
Dude, I was just like personal development, like all this mindset talk and all that. I was like, what the hell is this stuff? But I had to try something. I actually got tricked into this. It was personal development work, but I signed up to a productivity course because I thought that's going to solve you just need to be more productive with your time. And it took me down this path of asking some bigger questions. And that's where I started my journey, man, this internal journey into the happiness, the fulfillment, the joy, the connection I desire with my wife, the presence I desire with my kids, to be able to navigate that, but also too, to show up better in business, like to show up as a good business operator.
Yeah.
It's an internal game. Like there's external to a certain extent, but it's just a direct reflection of where I was at internally. And so that led me down the path, man. And 10 years on, like I'm still in the work. Like I've just surrendered to the fact that I'm in this work about understanding myself till the day I die. Like that's the time where I can stop.
Well, I think that's kind of the way, just from my own journey, I realized that everything's a bit of a work in progress.
Yeah.
And the second you start saying, I'm done it, I'm there, you've failed.
Yeah, you get the slap from the universe, we call it.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm all sweet now. And then like, bang, some big challenge hits you and reminds you that, no, bro, we've still got work to do.
Yeah, there's always work to do.
Yeah, and I love it. Like there's a lot of guys who come into the realm and they start this and they're like, how long I got to do this for? It's like, dude, this is the path, man. Like you do this work until, well, you can stop, but what happens? And a lot of guys test that. I tested it like over and over again. I'm like, I'm all good. I don't need to do this internal work anymore. But that's when I would get slapped, by a challenge or something, or I get triggered or I'd frustrated or I'd fall back into some old habits and patterns. I'm like, dude, you can't stop the work.
We really are creatures of habit.
Yeah, and you just, you fall in love with the process, man. Like, I think at first it is pretty uncomfortable. Like, it's quite an uncomfortable journey because you're not doing the same thing that you've been doing for the past 10, 15, 20 years. You're really breaking down the way that you show up and the way that you operate. However, over time, like that effort becomes less and the return on investment, so to speak, like the differences and the changes that come out of it, man, have been phenomenal.
And I'm sure you could probably contest to that. I would assume those returns on your investment would get bigger as time goes, and as more time you invest into it, the more you get out of it.
100%, man. Like just marriage, like a lot of guys come in successful in business, crushing it in business, but their marriage is kind of like it's kind of hit the bottom. They'll show up as a good dad.
Yep.
They'll show up in business, but their marriage, it's like, oh man, it just doesn't work. It's not work. I can't make it happen, etc. Through this line of work, because I was there as well, my marriage now, like 13 years on, is better than what it was when we first got married.
That's amazing.
And it's through the work.
It's a testament to your work.
Yeah, man. Like, and I share it openly. Like, it's not hey, I'm just saying this here on the podcast to look good. Like, if you go and listen to the podcast I do with Rising Kings, I had chosen one on there where we shared the journey that we went through together. I'm blessed she hung around, man. Like, if I was in her shoes at that early stage, I would not have put up with me. But I was just so disconnected from who I was, and it just showed up in terms of this disconnection at home. And so through the work, man, like I love the marriage. Like I love this union and this experience I'm going on together on this journey with I call her my chosen one, my wife, but also too the connection, then the deeper connection that comes out with my children. And it's a deeper connection with myself, man, like more confidence, more fulfillment, more happiness, more joy, just through literally by working on this internal game.
That's amazing. And thank you for really like diving into that and telling everyone, including me. Like, it's a big thing to share, especially when it's like, everyone loves talking about how great things are.
Yeah.
But no one wants to say, hey, things weren't the best.
Yeah.
And I had to fix them. So, in saying that as well, once you kind of got to that point where you would put this together and, you'd build this system at least for yourself and you were able to kind of figure out what worked, what didn't work. What was the process like when you decided, hey, it's time to completely change my career path?
Yeah.
And this is where my calling is. And it's not, I've now helped myself and it's like, who can I help next?
Yeah.
Like, because, from the profession you were in to where you are now is a very different place.
Dude, completely different. Like, I think guys actually crack up when they're like, what? You're an aerospace engineer. Like, how the hell are you in men's performance coaching? And the pathway, man, like I said, like I actually never set out to start a business or anything. So I had a business at the time that was in physical health, like we're doing supplement stuff. And then I went and worked for a company called The Entourage. Now at The Entourage, I was working as a business advisor, right? So I did a couple of presentations, but I would advise early startup businesses on strategy and things that they should be thinking about. Mm-hmm. Through that though, as I was having this internal journey and changing, just like through my conversations, the way I was showing up, my friends, like my friend network and that business network, like, and anytime we're talking, they're just like, dude, how come you always go so deep? Like we're not talking about just numbers of business.
It's service level.
Yeah, it's just like I had like there's a little bit of interest in it, but I'm like, dude, I want to know what makes this guy actually tick.
Yeah,
because I'm genuinely curious, and because I'm like, the more I can understand another individual, the more it reflects on me, and I understand myself. And so as I was going through this, I just had other guys go, man, like, what is this stuff? Like, how are you asking yourself these questions? Like, what is the path, or what are the things that you've been doing? And dude, I just literally took, it was about 6 guys, I invited them and I said, hey, do you want to come out 2 days? I put it out in the Blue Mountains and I said, I'll just take you through this framework and methodology that I've been running that I live by. And they're like, yeah, man, absolutely, let's do it. And so I took a group of guys out there, and that started. It wasn't called Rising Kings. It had no name. It was just like, come and hang out for 2 days. I'll take you through it. We started having deep conversations about marriage, relationships, confidence, self-worth, self-acceptance, as well as business, etc. We trained together, we ate together, you sleep under the same roof. And all of a sudden you get this connection and bond with guys where they let their guards down.
Yeah.
And so most of them were business owners, and all of a sudden it's like, it doesn't matter how much success you want to generate in your business. If you're not connected with your inner self and happy about it and fulfilled about it, etc. Like, bro, you can take your business from 10 to 50 mil.
Yep.
But nothing's going to change.
No.
You can take, like, I've had guys come in, like, they're at 30, 40 mil, and they're like, oh man, I'm not going to be happy until it gets to 600 mil. And I'm like, dude, you're just going to waste the rest of your life frustrated until you get to this massive thing. But what if you could do it along the way and actually enjoy it as we went through?
To people that have done that and they've said, I'm just, from things that I've seen, and you always hear the same narrative, and it's like, I had a goal, whether it was like I wanted to buy a particular car or my business needed to be a particular turnover. And every time you hear someone talk about that, I've never once heard someone say, oh, I felt so fulfilled when I got there. They all say the same thing. Oh, it was great when I got there, but then it was like, well, I feel really empty.
Yes. Yeah, man, we get a lot of it. Like, whether it is business, whether it's, hey man, like, I've been training for 4 years to run a marathon or an Ironman triathlon, etc. And I found myself in that position. I trained for this Ironman triathlon, and that was my whole thing. Like, my life's going to change when I complete this. I was doing it to please my father once I did some internal work and realized he was always a triathlete. He always wanted to do Ironman. I went and did it, etc. But then all of a sudden you cross the finish line and you're like, now what?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, man. Like, striving for these, it's good to have, like, don't get me wrong, man. Like, it's very important to have goals and things to strive for. What we've got to be careful of is, like, what is the expectation we're putting around that one particular thing?
Mm-hmm.
Because once you get to it, and you will get to it eventually, it's like, well, what happens next? Like, you got to keep feeding that beast. But it's like, don't hinge everything on, well, I'll be happy when. And it's the age-old saying, man, I'll be happy when I get the Ferrari or the Lamborghini or the house or this changes or I get the $10 million business, etc. But the truth is, you get to it, you break that goal and ask yourself, are you happy? No. Well, what's the actual problem here? It's not about achieving goals. There's a deeper internal dialogue that needs to happen on the process to get there. And that's the work I really love.
And with that goal setting, I know you're saying it's not the be or end all, and I agree, but where do you feel that still lies on a level of importance in just life and maybe having those aspirations or wanting to get there? Because it's like, you're never going to remove that completely, and it's not something you also want to kill. So it's like, where do you feel that kind of fits in the journey?
So we look at what's the emotional connector to the goal, to the thing that you're striving for. So instead of just like, hey man, I want to get to $10 million. It's like, why do you want to get to $10 million? Oh, so I can buy the house, I can buy the car. Why do you want to buy that house and that car? Oh, so I can give my family a place that they have plenty of space to move around with. Why is that important? Oh, because I want my kids to feel like, like they can have space and freedom, etc. Why is that important? And as you start digging through these on specific goals, you start to realize, dude, it's not about the house. You can create that environment right now with what you have for your children, if that's the truth. But the thing is, we don't dig down so deep that we just start on the surface level, and so we just hunt after it because we get addicted to the chase, the hunt. But once you start digging in and you dig in on the why, you start to realize, man, I've already got it. This would just be like icing on the cake. And you can still go and get it with less effort, less stress, less frustration, less disconnect. All the things that kind of hinder and slow a man down getting to his specific desired outcome.
But I also feel like, from what you're saying, is it's not just the less stress from that side of it, but it's also that you've now got the right fuel to understanding why you want that.
Correct.
So it's like, okay, like, we're going to nurture this thing, being my beautiful family, right? And my kids and my wife and everything. And then it's like, well, I'm not just on this journey by myself to get there. I'm doing this for them, but we're all on this journey together.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not like you had to sacrifice them to get to that goal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we look at it like push and pull. There's push energy. Like, got to push myself to get this thing, to get all that. And then there's pull energy. Like I'm very clear on why I want this and I'm excited to get it. And I love what I have. And I'm also going to drive myself to move towards these higher goals and aspirations. And so it's more of that pull energy that I think is like more like that passion. Like you feel passionate about it rather than, bro, I've got to get up, I've got to grind, I've got to make this happen, I've got to make this happen in order to achieve these particular goals. I'm not saying you bounce out of bed and you're like, dude, I can't wait to crush the day. However, you do it with more just passion and enjoyment. Like there's a different energy that comes with it. Like I'm excited to step into the office. I'm excited because I've got my chosen one who's on my side on this journey with me.
It's also understanding your purpose along the way too. So.
Yeah, so purpose is a critical element that comes into it, which ties into, like we talked about, like what do you want, but why do you want it? And then asking yourself, well, who do you need to be in order to get it?
Yeah. Like back to what you just said before about that trip you took those 6 guys on out into the Blue Mountains. And, you know, you had this very great experience with them. You know, it was a very connected experience where you all shared. Obviously, everybody's opened up where they were at in life and you know, shared probably things they wouldn't have shared otherwise if they hadn't gone on this trip. From there, where was it that you were like, okay, this has got legs? You know, this is where I need it. This is what I need to do to help people. Was it straight after that? Was there a period of time after that? Did you go maybe through someone else's course and realize this guy's a fraud? I need to do this properly. Like, wait, we don't need to name anyone, but like, was there a particular moment where you were like, okay, this is my calling?
So there was no particular course or anything like that. I took those 6 guys, I saw the breakthroughs they had, and then they're like, dude, my mate over here needs to go on this thing or do it. You know, can you do it again? Really was what we looked at. And so then I read another one, I think it was like 4 months later, same thing. And I was still working at the Entourage full time and just doing this thing on the side. Now, divine intervention had it, man. Like the Entourage went through some stuff, some scaling issues with their business, and they had to go from like an 80-person team down to like a 16-person team. My job was lost through that. And so that happened because I don't think I would have chased this path that I'm on now with Rising Kings had this not happened, because, you know, I'm like, it's steady income, it's a business, I'm doing that, I'm just kind of doing this thing on the side. And then it just forced me. It was like, dude, you don't have an income now. So I looked at, what do I do here? Like, do I look at driving this thing where I've got a little bit of traction? We've been doing it for like 8-9 months. Or do I go and find another job? And that was a pretty tricky time, man. Like, I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs know the deal. Like, you don't have an income. I started just reaching out to these guys. Yeah, we started doing a little bit of one-on-one coaching. Didn't have a program or anything like that involved. But dude, I was down to the point where I was like, I was ringing up companies where I was like, oh, what I'll do is I nearly went into mattress sales.
Yeah.
Just to get cash, man. Like literally looking at this place, and we've found out, and they're like, you know, we provide you with a mattress. You show up at this place.
I could have never made a mattress salesman. So
right.
I was definitely blind.
It was crazy, man. But it was just like, was that very reactive, because I hadn't really gotten deep enough to trust myself and have the confidence in myself that I can make this thing work. And that was part of my journey. And so just over time, man, like just the divine interventions, like I call them that. Like, I don't know, like just things happen. Like at the time you go, why is this happening to me? This is ridiculous, etc. But then in hindsight, you're like, bro, I'm so glad that happened. And that led me down the path of putting more time, effort, and energy into this working with men. And so it just evolved from there, man. Like more guys started inquiring. We put a name around it, Rising Kings. We started marketing it. We started selling a particular program and a course that we had. And that was, you know, nearly 7 years ago, man.
And on that as well, like was it early in that 7 years when you were like, this has got legs to go the distance? Or was it something that's kind of just evolved and it's been one of those things where it's like, we just kind of take everything as it comes?
It's just evolved, man. Like, I know I'm on the right path with the work that I'm doing. Like this is why I'm here, like to inspire, empower, and support men, like at a certain age bracket. Like all of our guys usually married or have had kids, right? And they're just in that arena of life. And it's like, my role is to inspire, empower, and support these guys to go from that old way of thinking to this new system, this new way of thinking. And so early on, it wasn't like, hey man, I got this, and it just rolled in, and all of a sudden you're cash flush and you're like, dude, we're killing it. There were days, man, where I was like, I wanted to quit. You know, it was a really hard journey early on. Like we got a bit of traction, and then all of a sudden it goes really quiet. It gets really hard to acquire, to get customers on board, etc., to get guys to buy into the methodology and what you're doing. And I remember times, you know, you're doing cold sales calls. Like I'm not a sales gun at any stretch of the imagination, but you know, it's like head on the desk, cry. I remember calling Chosen One, just saying, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't think this is the path.
Yeah.
And thankfully she's like, look, just come home, just relax, chill. We'll deal with it tomorrow. Because I had the support of her, because she saw how much it made a change in our relationship as a couple. And she's like, I've seen the changes in these men. Like this is, you know, this is a pretty high level duty that you have here in your life to be able to do this. And so it just inched away. I wouldn't say it's easier now, but there's less effort, you know, like we've got a brand, we're moving, we're 7 years deep, still comes with its own challenges, etc.
Every day comes with its own challenges.
Yeah. So, but I love it. Like I'm invested in this, you know, this is my path.
And then for someone who, you know, something that really resonated with me from what you just said before was when I referred to it as a business and you referred to it as a movement. So what that tells me is that you've got this really deep purpose to what you do.
Yeah.
So how important is that if you're someone who's an entrepreneur or starting a business or even already owns a business or is operating one, how important is it to be understanding of what your purpose is and what your drivers are? So
I feel I don't botch this up, but you know, a quote from Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he said, you can handle any what with a strong enough why. And so what he's looking at there is if you understand why you're doing something, like if deep down into your purpose, like this is why I'm here, this is why I've created this business, this is why I'm doing it, and it serves at a higher or deeper level, you can handle the challenges, the pain, the frustrations, all the things that get thrown at you in order to help you move towards that particular outcome that you're looking for. Because it's not just then about standard metrics of how many likes do I get, how much money do I make, what's my cost per acquisition, cost per lead, etc. They're all important for driving a business, but at the same time, you got to have that mental fortitude and resilience, and that has to tie in with your purpose. Because if I was just out chasing dollars, this was not the fastest path.
No.
Like I'm an aerospace engineer. Like I could have made a lot more money by focusing on engineering for the past 9 years.
Yeah, of course. But obviously your purpose has led you somewhere else.
Yes.
Which is amazing to see. And it's amazing to see the work that you have done and how deep you do get into it, just even talking now at a surface level. Ben, while we're on the topic of purpose, how important is it for that young, especially that young entrepreneur, where, you know, you've probably seen it in people that maybe have been in business a long time and they still don't understand their purpose or the purpose of their business. How important, in your experience, is it from not just talking to other people, but running your own companies? How important is it understanding that purpose of what you do and what you're there to achieve in the big scheme of things?
Critical, right? In the short term, it probably doesn't matter. Like you see guys create a lot of success short term without a purpose. It's just, hey man, I just want to make money.
Yeah.
Right. But I think in the long term, like if you're playing the long game here, like 10 years plus, and you really want to create a legacy or leave something behind or create the wealth that's going to support your family, etc., purpose really sits at the core of it. And the reason I say it, man, is like, you know, in entrepreneurial journey, dude, like every challenge that's going to come at you that you've read about is going to come at you. Like it's not just, those guys had to deal with it. Mine's going to be a very unique path. Like I'm still learning as I go through this entrepreneurial journey. And the thing that holds me to it and enables me to move through those storms is a tie-in with purpose. Like I'm very clear on why the business exists, what we do to help our clients, and also what my role is in it. And I think if you miss any of those, like if you just rush out, and like there is the whole idea of like just get started and get moving, but But if you can't tie it into a deep enough purpose, at some point, it's going to break. And it's going to break not just the business, but the individual, right? Like break you down mentally. At some point, you will hit a realm or a element in your business where it's like, I can't get beyond this. Whether that's frustration, feeling stuck, disconnected, but you get to that breaking point where you're like, I just can't continue on anymore. And I'm sure you've heard lots of stories of successful entrepreneurs, early stage, but then they just fall into a hole mentally. Like they just can't keep up with the pressure, the stress, the pain, etc. that comes with it. And I really feel a lot of it sits in, they're not clear on what their purpose is.
And that kind of just leads into the next thing. Like it's a really good explanation you've given of like really understand that purpose, because it is a challenging thing to run a business. And it's the bit that no one really talks about is how challenging it is to run a business, not just on yourself, but on everyone around you, whether they work for you, whether they're part of your family, and how it all relies back on you as the business owner. And that does play a big role in mental health. And this is the thing that really no one ever talks about. Everyone loves to talk about how much money they made or how they, maybe fucked it up and then kind of fixed it, or whatever it might be. But no one actually talks about the stresses and the implications on mental health that comes with owning a business. And I think that's a really important thing. And I don't think it's probably anyone more qualified to talk about that than you, that we've had on this podcast. But where do you feel that mental health, in your opinion, fits in with running a business? Like, how important is it to keep that in check and to keep on top of those levers that can, sometimes end up with, you in a pretty dark place?
Yeah. So I look at health I'll use the term capacity. And so we want to be able to have the capacity, like a large enough capacity to deal with the challenges of creating and growing a business, as well as raising a family, working on a marriage, your own health, etc. And so I look at there's 4 core elements to it, right? There's the physical health, there's the mental health, there's the emotional health, and there's the spiritual health. Now, all 4 of these need to be looked after in order to create the capacity. Now, if I use the analogy that back in the day before we were office workers, etc., it was all like farming, and that's how people produced money and created businesses, factory workers, etc. The physical health was the most important piece. If you didn't have your physical health together, you couldn't work. So therefore, you don't have a job. And therefore, you're down and out, right? We're now in the information age, the knowledge age, in where we are. We're all behind screens. We're taking out a lot of information. I see it as like we're in the mental health age here. The same way that we spend time on our physical health. Like you go to the gym, you train, you look after what you eat, your inputs. Yep. That's a critical element, right? Like you want to look after your physical health so that you can show up as a great dad, show up in terms of like helping raising kids with your wife, but also too being able to show up with energy, etc. in business. Mental health though, it's like a lot of people just skip that. Now, when I mention mental health here, I'm talking about the same way that with training the physical side, like we go to the gym, we lift, we train, we run, we look after cardiovascular, we look after the foods and stuff that we put in. It's like, what are we doing with our mental health? Mental health is like, it's the meditation, it's the journaling, it's the cold water immersions, it's the breath work, it's the rejuvenation that needs to happen, it's the deloading. But on top of that are things like, what are the inputs you're putting in? The same way with your nutrition or your physical health, we're not just smashing KFC, McDonald's, lollies, etc. as much as we'd love to, but it doesn't serve us, right? It's the same with our mental health. Like, what are the inputs? The biggest challenge I see when it comes to mental health does tend to come with the inputs that people are using, right? Like they're just locked in on social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. But there's no controlling factors around this. And so we're just loading ourselves up with junk media if it's not done properly. And this impacts an individual. Like I see guys who come in and they're like running exceptionally good businesses. They're burnt out. But I'm like, what are your habits, man? Like, how are you actually looking after your mental health? And most guys, they've never been taught. They've never been shown. We hear about it. Oh man, you need to meditate. You need to journal. But most guys are like, I tried that, bro. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so you've got to look at it the same way that you do your physical.
I also feel like pride comes into it as well. Like a lot of the time people go, oh, I'm I look in the mirror, I look pretty fit, I'm fine, I can do whatever. But then it's what's happening in here or in here. And it's like, spiritually or mentally, it doesn't add up with what you see on the outside. And maybe people don't have enough. The way I look at it, especially with guys, is they might not have the pride to actually look deep enough inside themselves to say, hey, maybe I need to address this, or maybe I'm feeling this way because maybe I need to talk to someone or get some coaching.
It's uncomfortable, man. Yeah. And it's very different. Like, it's a very different way that it operates to going to the gym, you lift, you train, you see the return on investment. Hey man, I train, I get the muscles, I feel good. But when it comes to mental health, like you can't just look in the mirror and go, oh man, like I'm way more clear than what I was before. Oh, I'm way more mindful than what I was before. The awareness though comes with the way that you start to show up and respond to the challenges that hit you. And so I see it as like the earlier you can get into this, the better, because the bigger the challenges as your business grows and as you grow as an entrepreneur, etc., you want to have the momentum to be able to go through those. And so I think there's a little bit of pride, but the pride I would say comes from just lack of knowledge and not really knowing how to do it. And so therefore we go, I don't need that stuff.
Do you feel like maybe it's also, especially with men, in my experience, has been like, maybe it's a bit taboo to kind of talk about your feelings or talk about the way you're really feeling? Do you think that's a big part of it as well?
Definitely is, man. Like, it's getting better, but also too, like, I think about myself. Like, sometimes it takes a bit of work to share where I'm really at, even if it's just with my chosen one. And it's not because of pride or anything like that. It's just like, I don't want to feel like I'm whinging. I don't want to feel like I'm complaining. We've been raised as boys, like, don't whinge, don't complain, get on with it. So the work we do inside Rising Kings is like, we create a space to talk and share, but it's not, oh man, my wife is da-da-da-da-da. Like, I won't question that. I'll be like, why is that your wife's problem? Or why is that your wife's fault? That's on you, man.
Yeah.
Like, what's actually underneath that? I'm triggered because of, I'm frustrated because of, it's not working because of. And then when we can dig in on that, all of a sudden the man doesn't come in with complaints and problems. He's coming in to actually investigate, like, why am I feeling this way? Because this is hindering me. If I'm not connected at home, I can tell you I'm not very good at work. I'm going to make poor decisions. I'm carrying around baggage that I don't need to carry around. And all that ties into, like you said, like being able to share, but not just share and just dump it and then go, hey man, I'm good. It's like having men around you to actually probe you and go, what's the deal, man? And what are we going to do about it?
Keeping you honestly in check. That's what I look at it.
Yeah.
Like, if you've got someone there that's maybe not your partner that you can talk to, and then it's like, well, this is the way I'm feeling. Someone's going to say, like you just said before, like, cut the bullshit, it's you.
Yeah.
Or, hey, look, let's look into this deep, and it's obviously something else that's causing the issue.
Yeah. And then you think about it, man, once you cut and you get down and you start to understand, this is the root problem that leads up to these particular symptoms, instead of spending all this time, effort, energy trying to solve these symptoms, right, that never go away, we come down and we focus on what's the core problem. So it's like the weed analogy, you can keep cutting the top of the weed, it keeps growing back. But until you get down into the root of it and rip it out by the root, those symptoms are going to keep being there. And that's a lot of the work we do. Like, it's not the surface level. It's like, dude, what are these problems down here, man? These are the things we got to fix so that it comes up and these symptoms dissipate and disappear.
And then, like, that's a really good analogy you use where, you can't just cut the top of the weed off. You have to get it from the root. How often do you see when sometimes those weeds don't get cut? Sorry, they do get cut and they don't get pulled from the root, and then more weeds grow and grow and grow, and then turns into a cluster, or you could call it depression.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a much bigger problem to deal with when someone's got this dark cloud that's always over their head. How often does that, or do you see that in your experience happening, especially with like business owners or people that are, maybe so driven professionally that everything's kind of fallen to the side, and now they're in this place where it's like, I'm fucking disconnected from my kids. They don't want to spend time with me because I'm never with them. Or, maybe they haven't even got that far in the thinking that it's like, my kids don't want to spend time with me. My wife's not interested. Like, but I've got this great business. I make a few loads of money and drive a Ferrari, but the rest of it's gone to shit and it's a dumpster fire. And then, they might look really successful and happy on the outside, but they're really miserable on the inside.
It's pretty common, like not necessarily down to like a level of dark depression where these guys aren't getting out of bed. Like we deal with a guy who has like base level, like he's got his base well and he's looking to operate at that higher level. But we do get a lot of guys like who feel burnt, like that's burnout, man. That's exhaustion. Like that's where it's like, I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels, Groundhog Day, doing the same thing. Nothing's changing. I still feel frustrated. I'm fighting with the wife all the time. My kids frustrate me, etc. It's because they've spent so much energy and time cutting the top of the weed, dealing with the symptom, and it never goes away. And so they start to doubt themselves. They're like, am I broken? Like, what's the problem here? And so once we have these conversations and we dig in and actually uncover and they understand, bro, there's a root problem down here. Now all the effort, energy, time, etc. goes into fixing this. But then as it comes up, those symptoms disappear. Oh, man, my wife acknowledges me now. We have a great relationship. My kids love hanging out with me. I'm having so much fun. I'm leaving work at 5 p.m. when I tell my wife I'm going to leave work and come home and have dinner together. It's a fun household. I'm enjoying my weekends again. I'm enjoying a bit of play. I'm going out, I'm doing exercise and I enjoy it. Like all of a sudden they've gone from burnout to like, passion, excited, fulfillment. And it's not because some radical thing shifted or changed that they put into their play. It's like we went down and we actually fixed this piece down here and then put a system in place to stop that occurring again.
Yeah, just on that, I think that's one thing that I've just kind of maybe just through self-discovery kind of figured out is you need time allocation. What I mean by that is there's time for yourself. Yeah. There's time for you and your wife or your chosen one. And there's time for you and your kids and your family. And it's like understanding like, okay, well, what's more important? Being at work until 10 o'clock at night and getting no extra work done than if I left at 6 just because I think that I need to be there? Or is it like, do I leave work at 6, sit down around a table and have dinner with my family, spend time with my kids, read my kid a book, put my kid to sleep? Yeah. Like, what's really more important? Like, and maybe it's just through, and this time I've figured out maybe it's just through, maybe people, not being here anymore, passing on and stuff like that. You realize like, well, what did that person really leave behind? They left behind great memories. They left behind their love. All the material stuff kind of just falls away once you get to a certain place. And it's like, well, it's the memories that people have. Yeah. And you want your kids to have those memories of you and you want your wife to have those memories of you. So it's like, well, that's the really important bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we have this saying, you got to be selfish to be selfless. And so what we're really talking about there is like, you have to put in the time, effort, energy to work on yourself. Now, working on yourself isn't, well, Ben said I got to go to the pub, man, and hang out with my mates every night for an hour, and that's what I'm going to tell Chosen One. Or I got to go and play golf every weekend for 6 hours because I got to work. I'm talking like the inner work. Maybe it is exercise, meditation, journaling, etc. But you've got to invest that time into yourself so that you have the capacity, man, to show up and put that effort back into, or put the ability to show up for your wife, for your kids, and bigger, like community, etc., people around you who rely on you, who need you. So I think it's a really big thing, man. I think a lot of guys struggle with the whole investing in themselves first. It's like, bro, I'll give everything to the business, and then what I've got left, I'll throw at the kids, and there's a speckle that goes to my wife and nothing goes to me. Yeah. And that leads to resentment. That leads to the anger, the frustration, the disconnect. The wife's like, dude, I get nothing. We married before we had kids. I'm getting nothing over here. The kids are getting a little bit and the business is getting everything. And then this guy's going like, dude, no one respects me. The kids don't respect me. The business doesn't respect me. Everyone's against me. I feel frustrated. I feel annoyed. I feel burnt out. And that's where it leads if we don't start focusing on this type of work that we're talking about.
No, it sounds like you've had an amazing journey kind of getting to this point, not just with yourself, but also with everybody else that you've helped. And that kind of leads back to the business. And now you really understand your purpose. You understand what you're here to do. And, you're having this amazing journey. Where does marketing kind of fit into it for you? Like, you've obviously figured out what you're here to do and who you need to talk to. What was the medium or mediums you used to be able to then talk to those people, to be able to reach to them, to help them? Because it's one thing to do this great work, and we've seen a million people where they've had this great business and they've got all this passion involved. But then it's like, well, how do I actually Now talk to the people that I need to help. So what was the process or the journey that you've taken to get to at least this point where it was like, okay, maybe we'll try an outreach program or some like radio marketing or social media? Like what didn't work?
Yeah. A lot of our work has been in, or the marketing side, like social media. So like really amplifying what we do, why we do it, the results that we get from a lot of the guys. Like, so Instagram, has been big for us. And then we got into podcasting about a year and a half ago. And that's been a really strong medium because we started to think about, well, our type of guy, like how are they consuming content? Mm-hmm. And so one of the big things is like, we want to get involved in YouTube shortly, but I'm always looking through the lens. It's like, we need to speak with this type of guy. Like how are they consuming content? Like where are they consuming the content that we can have a conversation with them? And that's really helped us because we've made a lot of mistakes along the way in terms of that, like we have invested in the past in like magazines, print, all that sort of stuff, and minimal returns off the back of it. Whereas now we're really looking at it through the lens of, hey, we know this guy loves podcasts. We know that they spend quite a bit of time on YouTube. Then we need to be prevalent and in there. But one of the biggest things and biggest piece of advice I can give, entrepreneurs that are running a business is being able to start the conversation where their customer's at. Like I struggled with that at first because I'm like, I'm playing up here and I'm like, hey, come join this. Like, this is how we roll. And this guy down here is like, dude, I can't even fathom operating like that. And so there was a massive disconnect.
You need to get a level to speak to them.
You got to come back down, and that's hard, man. Like coming back down. When I say down, like I don't mean like as in less, but just back to where I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because it was a very different modality. My mind was in a very different place to what it is now.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go to a guy or if you went to me 5 or 10 years ago and you're like, bro, it's all about abundance and excitement and passion, and you got to work on yourself and you journal and you meditate, and be like, out here, man, like I don't need your services. Yeah. I was chasing something else. I'm like, tell me how to make more money. Tell me how to da-da-da. So it's really aligning with where are these guys at that need this level of support at this particular time in their life. And so that's been a really big thing with marketing. I'm not a marketer, brother. Like I'm very good at the delivery side. I have just really crafted very well on the delivery. And I think that's been a massive proponent of Rising Kings because the guys who come in refer quite well off the back of it. And it literally, like they say, like you've transformed my life. And that's really powerful for us. I have, however, gone, Ben, you've got to learn about marketing, mate. You've got to become a marketer. And so over the past probably like 2 years, I've really invested and started to sharp my sword around understanding what marketing is, how it fits into the business. Because if we want to help more men, like I got to get better at marketing the message that goes out.
Definitely. It's also like you touched on something that was very important. What you just said is like, no matter what your business is, you generally have been through a journey.
Yeah.
You're at a particular level or a particular place. And the people that are coming to you for your service or your product aren't at that place yet.
Yes.
They're probably somewhere along their journey on their way to you. Whether, and this doesn't just mean like a self-development kind of business like your own or movement, as we say, I don't want to call it a business. But, it's no matter what it is that you do, you've kind of got to bring yourself to where your clientele is and what the language that they need to hear for you to be able to resonate your message across to them, for them to then be interested in what you're offering.
Yeah.
So it is a really important thing that I think a lot of people overlook.
Yeah.
And they'll say, oh, like, I'm here and I've done this and I've done that. And you're kind of talking at people, you're not talking to them.
Yes.
And they're just a disconnect. They're like, this guy, who the fuck does he think he is?
Yeah. And bringing in the whole, what's in it for them?
Yep.
Always asking yourself that question. Like, it's all good that you can sit on there and say, hey man, I spent this doing this and I've traveled here and I've spoken on this stage and all this. But it's like the person, your prospect's going like, man, I don't care. Like, how do you help me?
Correct.
Like how are you going to help me move from where I am to where I want to go? And I think that's been a huge thing off the back of us, is just like continually asking underneath, like what's in it for the prospect here?
That's like a big thing in marketing that we see all the time is people always want to talk about themselves or the business and how good they are. But what are you actually translating to the client? you're not telling them how you're going to help them. You're just talking about yourself. No one gives a shit about you. It's all about them. You're only there to help them. Yeah, it's like, regardless what it is that you're doing, if you're selling kitchen knives, you can sit there and say, we have the best knives in the world. But if you're not saying to the person you're trying to sell the knives to, hey, these knives can help you in your life this way, what the fuck are you really doing? You're just talking about how good you are. You're loading. Like, it's like you might sell some knives, but you're not going to sell a lot.
Yeah. And that ties in with what we've been talking about, like internal insecurities. Like, I think the insecure business owner will try and justify their existence and what they do, and I'm this and I'm that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can get over those insecurities, you can start to go, dude, it's not even about me.
That's what it all comes back down to, purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really understanding what that purpose is. And it ties not just into yourself and your business, but also just into the success of your business and marketing. That's real proof of it when you see businesses that understand that, like yourself, and you've got 7 years of skin in the game, where a lot of these self-development, I would say, types of companies or businesses appear, and they are just that. They're a business. They're there. They take people's money. They don't give them much help, or if anything, very minimal help, and kind of just sell them course after course.
Yes.
And there's no real proof in what they do. Whereas your proof in what you do is something you said before is, it's all really good that you've had to understand digital marketing and speaking to the right audience, but a lot of your new clientele comes through, or the new people that you help come through referrals, through people that you've already helped. So that's proof in what you do as well. Because if you weren't helping those people, they wouldn't be referring you to one.
I think too, just my own personal journey in this, like, it's not from a book, man. It's not from courses. It's like the stuff I share has literally been from me going through my own hell to get to this point in time. And I'm continually doing it. Like, I don't sit there and go, hey man, I've got all the answers, feet up on the table, stoogie cigar, saying, bro, I've got it all figured out. I'm continually in the work. Like, I learn new stuff about myself, and then I share that with the other men who are inside the movement to go, like, we're on this journey together. I always think of it like, it's like in the movie 300, man. It's just like, we're just these warrior men who are willing to pull out the sword and slay, like, get out there and have that crack. But we're doing it together. Like, we're learning from one another. We've got each other's backs. And I think it's really important in this day and age for men who really want to perform at that level to do that. It's not whinging about the wife and the kids and, your handbrake, or however you want to refer to them, at the pub with mates.
Yeah. And you see
it's like, man.
That's the norm, which is crazy.
It's hard, man. Like, we're definitely going through a shift, which is really good. Like, I'm watching as this men's work starts to take fold. But like you said, there's a lot of guys out there that are throwing stuff out there that I don't necessarily think serves, right? And then at the same time, while it is getting better, there's still a lot of work to do. Like, my love, like, where I really want to get to, man, is getting down to the teenage boy. Like, I really think that's where we've got to start the conversation. And it's a big thing for me with this work is how I show up for my son and daughter. Like, I'm pathing the way to say to my son, this is how you should operate as a man. And I'm saying to my daughter, like, if a man comes into your world and the way you want to connect, etc., this is how he should treat you. This is how he should operate, the way I treat your mother, the way I show up, the way I think, the way I act, the way I respond.
I'm a really big believer in that, and that is what me and my wife do, and probably just like you and your wife. What you do and the way that you interact with each other and with other people is a blueprint for your children. Yeah. Whether you're directly telling them or not, or it's just them observing you, because they fucking observe everything.
Yes.
Just that is a blueprint for them to how they're going to be, and the direction that they'll probably take in their life. And it'll either be a good or a bad thing. So it's like, well, how do I become the best version of myself? So then when they do see that, they're able to then emulate that, or at least part of the good bits of that.
100%.
Because we're all flawed.
Yeah, dude. 100%.
So Ben, before we wrap up, what is one thing that you would want to tell an entrepreneur or just a business owner that's maybe going through it, whether they're already along their business journey or are just starting out? What's one bit of advice, if you can turn back the wheels of time and go back to when you were starting out, or kind of in that self-discovery stage and you were figuring things out for yourself, what's one bit of advice you would want to give to your former self?
It's hard, man. The one piece, one magical piece.
There's a lot to it, but if there's one takeaway point where it was like, that was the one thing I'd say, if I had that advice, I probably could have figured a lot of it out myself, or at least put my brain in the right direction to take that journey.
Yeah. I think coming back to the conversation with yourself around why are you chasing this particular path? Because if I go back to where I was and I had that hard conversation with myself, it wouldn't have made the path easier, but it would have made the path less effort. I wouldn't have resisted all the challenges and the headaches that come with it, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm chasing business, it's going to be different. It's not going to be like everyone else's business journey. It's going to be smooth, because you have the plan, you have the system, etc. But the truth is, you're going to go through every hurdle, pain, headache, that everything that you've ever read is going to come to reality. And I think if you're very clear on why you're doing it, the effort as you go through that is going to be way less than if you're just striving to like, oh man, I think it's a good idea just to start a business. I think it's a good idea that I want to try and start a business to make a bunch of money. Great starting point, but then it's now time to go, but dude, why is this important to you? And I think if you nail that, it's going to make the journey way more enjoyable than, hey, you got your success, but at the same time, you burn a lot of bridges along the way.
That's some really good advice. Thanks, Ben. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and having this conversation with me today and with the audience, and just, telling them a little bit more about yourself and the journey you've taken so far, and can't wait to see where you go from here.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Honored to be here, man.